From the problem child facing off the dangerous Nate Diaz in August to him challenging Conor, whose legacy might just take a hit if he fights Paul. Here's all about Jake Paul demanding to fight McGregor in a boxing match after the Diaz fight. First, let's not forget that Paul's job against Diaz won't be easy. It feels like no matter what anyone does, Jake always finds a way into the center of the spotlight, especially when it comes to the world of combat sport. His most recent exploit being a fight with UFC legend Nate Diaz. Jake might talk a lot of trash during his press conferences, but one thing's for sure, and that's the fact that this fight isn't going to be an easy win. For one, he's coming off of a loss against Tommy Fury, which is going to have him feeling less confident against Diaz, who's known to be a dangerous boxer in the UFC. On the flip side, Diaz managed to beat Tony Ferguson when they faced off as the last fight Nate would be fighting under a UFC contract. There's also the fact that this fight is going to be held at 185 pounds, which is way heavier than what Diaz has fought in the past. Still, if he managed to slap the hell out of some of the best UFC fighters in the world, there's a good chance that he'll be able to smack Jake around a boxing ring. Plus, he seems to have an old nemesis on his side. Of course, I'm talking about Conor McGregor and his prediction about the fight. Conor recently sat down with Ariel Helwani for Matchroom Boxing in his very own pub in Dublin. There he was asked about his opinion on who had the best chance of coming out on top in the Paul versus Diaz fight. You'd think that thanks to their history, McGregor wouldn't be a big fan of Nate coming out on top. But surprise, that couldn't be further from the truth. When Conor shared his thoughts on the matchup, he talked about how he believed that Diaz will end up winning, and it didn't even end there. He went on and on about how the UFC's golden child is such a great fighter and how his rivalry with the man has always been about respect. He revealed how he'd spent over 40 minutes with him in the octagon, and at the end of it all, there was nothing but pure admiration from his side. And then came the Jake Paul slander. Conor compared him to a donkey, basically saying that he has no real skill. He did mention that Jake is still dangerous though, and that he shouldn't be taken too lightly. I mean, if you think about it, he's right. Despite not being as experienced as the Stockton native, Paul can still pack a heavy punch. You just have to look at his past matchups to see that. So far, he's managed to knock out Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren, and so many more notable fighters. He's definitely not someone that Diaz can afford to underestimate, especially when you consider that the YouTuber's words can be as threatening as his punches. Just look how quick he was to respond to Conor. As expected, it didn't take long for the problem child to come out with a response against the notorious. Paul went ahead and fired back in a recent press conference held for the upcoming fight between him and Diaz. Jake snarkily brought up how Conor might still have trauma from back when Diaz beat his ass in 2016. That was McGregor's first loss in the UFC.
And just locks it in deep. And Nate Diaz walks away with the biggest victory of his life.
But Paul said he's sure that it still haunts him to this day after all these years. He also sounded way too confident about how he would go ahead and get the job done and do what the Irishman never could. The Ohio native's been talking a lot of trash, so let's hope that he can back it all up, because he didn't stop with just sharing his plans to beat Diaz. He also said that he'll then follow it up with Conor. I'm not sure if calling McGregor out, especially in the beefed up state he's in nowadays, was the right move. But hey, it's show business. Anyway, needless to say that things are getting heated between the Irishman and the problem child, and we might get to see them step into a boxing ring with each other soon enough. Which makes you wonder, how serious was this call out? With everything that's going on, you have to wonder whether Jake was even serious about wanting to fight Conor. Well, he laid it on pretty thick, and it didn't really look like he was in the mood for jokes. He talked about how he has a whole roadmap for where he wants to take his career in combat sports. If y'all remember, a few months back, he even talked about the possibility of facing Nate in an MMA fight. That would mean that he'd be stepping into both Conor and Diaz's home turf. If he's saying things like that, well, who knows what else he could get up to. All in all, it seems like Paul is ready to face off against Conor. In press conference, he said that he's going to repeat what Nate did in the past and slap Conor's head off.
This is the only thing I'm focused on, and I'm filled with that hunger, and I have more conviction now than ever of what I'm going to do in this sport.
But this will be possible only if the Notorious accepts the fight. With all this trash talk coming his way, there's no doubt left in my mind that Conor will retaliate one way or the other. I'm not gonna lie, it'll be a pretty lit fight if Jake somehow manages to beat Diaz before his potential fight against Conor, because that'll give him the confidence and us a thrilling fight. Also, with his track record against retired MMA fighters, there's no telling what'll end up happening. That being said, the important question still remains.
I've been working in silence, I promise you that. I promise you that. I promise you I know what I'm capable, and this is going to be the best version of Jake Paul that you're ever going to see in the ring.
Whether McGregor will even accept the fight. It's important to note that this isn't the first time Jake has called the Irishman out. Every time he's called for McGregor to sign the contract, Conor has shrugged him off and never really taken him seriously.
And you can't box as good as me, and I'm going to do to Nate what you couldn't, which is knock him the out. And you're going to be sitting there with your new beer company that's failing.
And that was when he was knocking out ex-champs like Woodley and Silva.
Anderson Silva got hit with that beautiful right hand by Jake Paul. All night, Jake Paul was throwing that right hand. Some landed.
So now, while Conor is talking trash about Paul, there's a huge chance that he's biding his time and letting himself shine and bask in Jake's glory. Remember, he hasn't shown any interest in wanting to face off against the YouTuber turned boxer yet, so it wouldn't really make sense for him to accept an offer right now. Plus, there's also the fact that he's in the process of signing a new contract with the UFC, so this fight would kind of end up getting in the way of that. There's also the fact that Conor rarely does anything anyone tells him to, so for him to listen to Paul and accept the fight on his terms would be way out of character for him. With all that in mind, it's hard to believe that the Notorious is going to waste his time with Jake. All he really seems to be doing is trying to stay relevant and build up hype for his eventual comeback to the UFC. Remember, folks, there's the Chandler fight to look forward to with McGregor.
The biggest icon of mixed martial arts history walks into the gym dressed to the nines, typical Conor McGregor walk. Most guys start to crumble, right?
Besides, facing a YouTuber in a boxing match might not be the best thing for his legacy as a fighter. Now, absolutely no offense to Jake. I'm not throwing any shade, but the fact is that Conor is levels above him. Just think about their status in the world of combat sports. It's surprising enough that he managed to land a fight with Diaz. So to go a step further and try to get it on with Conor, well, it doesn't make a lot of sense now, does it? It's like I said, Conor's trying to leave a mark on his sport. So adding Jake to his list won't exactly help him gain any points with the fans.
What do you think of that? Nate Diaz, Jake Paul fight.
I think Nate Diaz slaps the head off, and I look forward to seeing it.
Maybe when he retires and he really needs the money, he might consider getting into the ring with Jake, though the probability of that happening is pretty low. McGregor's got a bunch of pubs, a liquor business, and a big-ass name just begging for endorsements. So honestly, I don't really see him sinking too low anytime soon. Besides, this Conor fight won't even happen if Jake doesn't get a win over Diaz in August. We can sit here and speculate all day long, but the fact is that we won't know what'll happen till those two men step into the ring with each other first.
Thank you very much, guys. Again, DAZN pay-per-view, August 5th. USA and Canada, you can get it on DAZN pay-per-view
and duke it out till the final bell. Till then, the best we can do is sit tight and hope everything works out for everyone. But seeing the fan reactions online, it's safe to say that a lot of people want Diaz to kick Paul's. So from Conor's legacy possibly taking a hit if he fights Paul, to the problem child facing off against Nate Diaz in August, that was Jake Paul demanding to fight McGregor in a boxing match after the Diaz fight.